Hi and welcome everybody. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to have a beautiful conversation about the horror that just moved us, the one that really inspired us to keep just playing this genre and keep exploring it. Of course, I am joined today by Mickey.
Hey everyone.
Our resident horror aficionado.
Oh, I like that.
So what we're going to do is very simple here. We're going to talk about our love of horror games. I think for all of us, it started very young. Please talk to me about your first kind of memories about the genre, the horror genre.
Yeah, I think the horror genre started pretty early for me. So, I mean, I was watching horror movies as like a young child, probably too young to be watching those type of movies, but it definitely like correlated into playing video games, So I think one of the first kind of horror games I played as like a PG kind of horror game was Haunting. And I played it on the Sega Genesis. And you basically played as like a poltergeist who they called Polterguy. It's kind of cute. You see what they did there?
Yeah.
And then basically your whole goal of the game is to basically scare a family out of their house. And you get points for like how you scare them and like how you're able to kind of like manipulate them to get out of the house. So I really, really love that game. It's kind of one that's unknown, but super fun.
Hey, and that was on which platform?
I played it on Sega.
On Sega. Oh,
I think so. Yeah, on
all
Sega
this,
Genesis.
yeah, all the Sega kids out there, if you remember that game, please let us know, comment down below. Of course, every time we do this video, you can like on this video if you like them, subscribe if you want to see more. That will help us greatly. That's what supported this video. I'm going to talk very quickly about one that's very similar, kind of like to that vibe. It's not necessarily horror, but it's kind of like what got me interested in video games and that genre. And it was, I know you played that game. Zombie Ate My Neighbors.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it was stuff, but it was a lot of different things going on. It was really, really fun to kind of like try to survive in that world. It was very frantic, so I liked it. I like also the map was big.
The map was big. The enemies were cool because they did have a variety of enemies, and it does give you that feeling of like urgency, of like being scared, of like, picking up the pace and like your heartbeat and just trying to like make sure that you went through it. I think that was really, really fun, actually.
Yeah, I really like that. I've never played Haunting, so that's something I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on. But can you tell me a little bit, when that game came out?
Let me see here. It probably came out, it was early. So the early 90s.
Like 1990.
Probably, yeah, 92, 93, like
right.
around that. Yeah, around that.
So around the same time of Zombie Ate My Neighbors.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like that was kind of like the bridge into horror games for me.
And how did it all evolve for you? So it started there, but I know that, the love got deep rooted and it evolved and it blossomed. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, for sure. Like this is the subject that's like near and dear to my heart. You know what I mean? Like the fact that you call me a horror aficionado makes me feel really cool, but like it's actually not that great. Like it kind of, I would say I definitely took a break from like horror games in between, but I definitely got back into it with Resident Evil 2. That was that was sort of like got me like reignited. I'm like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. Like you get to play as two different characters. The story was brilliant. The enemies were brilliant. Like everyone knows like RE2 is a classic.
Yeah, I remember when the first Resident Evil came out around 1996, 1997, I think 97, if I recall correctly. And at that time I was getting into video games. I wasn't really big into video games before that. Like the arcadey nature of it made me like die a lot and not really wanted to engage. But when story-based games started to happen and games like Metal Gear Solid, and then it got me into Resident Evil, the first one, I tried playing it. I got the literally pants scared out of me when the dog came out of the window. I stopped playing exactly there. My friend had the game. I told him, hey, listen, I'm going to sit next to you if you don't mind so I can kind of know what the story is. And that's how I got my appreciation for Resident Evil. I love the rendered backgrounds. But when I played it, it's just, I was too scared to play it. I really was not efficient when I was playing it. And then I remember, the second one came out. That was such a huge revelation. So when you played it, what really got you, gets really like sick is little things into you so that you really like were okay, this is the thing I want to be playing.
It's the gravity of the situation that you're in. You can feel how tense the game is. Like even when you're trying to solve the puzzles, as soon as you get to the police station, like you realize like it's on, man. So so for that, I think and the characters are really good and it just really sucks you into this world. You really do believe you're Leon Kennedy or you're Claire Redfield. And you know, you're just really trying to get out of here like unscathed. And
And
you felt that.
do you remember playing any other game that was like that?
I think like evolving into that, it would probably be like Resident Evil 4, of course, like the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
original, and Silent Hill. But
Okay, okay.
Silent Hill, I actually played with my friend because she had a PlayStation or her brother had one, so, and I did not. So we actually
Mm.
just played one night, like one weekend, we just played all weekend, passing the controller back and forth because she's like, "Oh, I love Silent Hill." So we really got into that one as well. And I was like, "Okay, this is amazing. Like, there's actually really good horror games out there besides Resident Evil." So that kind of opened up my mind even more.
Well, I know that Resident Evil was very important for the whole genre. It inspired so many games. I know that, you know, from Parasite Eve to Silent Hill to I mean Dino Crisis, which is another thing, but you know, all these games were inspired by that art style, by the way the characters moved around and by the way the cinematics kind of happened, right? The way the story was presented to you. And you did mention Silent Hill. I want to know, because me, when I played Silent Hill, first one, second one, same thing happened. I got to a certain level. When I see triangle head peoples or ghost, baby ghosts, kids ghosts in the school, that's when I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get the next key. I don't need to figure it out. But in let's say talking about Silent Hill, what got you liking, like really got you involved in that series? And can you talk about the differences that you might have noticed between Silent Hill and the Resident Evil franchise?
Yeah, I think Silent Hill, it's the mystery of it all.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want to find out like what happened to your daughter, and you know you're in this really eerie world, and for some reason it's like, am I dreaming or is this actually reality? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what you're trying to figure out, you know. And I think that's the kind of feeling that they leave you with, is you're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this game.
So one would be like, let's say there would be movies. Resident Evil would be your horror movie, your action horror movie, and Silent Hill would be your kind of like horror thriller suspense kind of.
Yeah, that slow burn, that's kind of like, you know, opening one door, trying to get to the next, trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, there's really a difference between the two. Like one is you feel it's more reality based, even though it's like, you know, the infected, and then the other one it's more of like a mystery where it's you're
Mhm.
trying to unfold. So those are the two things, like two differences that I found the most, but they're both good in their own right. You know what I mean? And I'm really looking forward to hopefully playing the new Silent Hill remake when it comes out. I think that's going to be really dope. I was going to ask you though, like kind of after playing Resident Evil, how did you get to branch out into more horror games? How did you start to dip your little feet in there?
Well, for me, it's very easy. You know, that's a very good question. I think that, you know, my admiration for horror games was very deep, and I started to like the mechanics and like the feel of them, even though I still couldn't really play and finish one. So what really got me into these games more were games are a little bit adjacent to horror. So I remember playing Condemned around like 2000, the early 2000
Hmm.
thousands. I played it was I played on an Xbox. I'm sure it was on a PC too, but it was a first person kind of game when you're really into the shoes of the person. You really get to see everything up close, and it was really dark. And I don't think it was necessarily 100% horror, but it was really dark. And that I finished that game, and I remember feeling that accomplishment. And I went into a game that was called Fear. And I played that. I know a lot of PC, you know, people back in the days know that game. It was an action where you had guns and you could like slow down the time, but there was a lot of horror elements, a lot of sci-fi horror into it. And I remember also playing BioShock. No, no, I know it's not a horror game, but the setting, the dark setting, the fact that, you know, almost nothing was really working, and it was like really a desecrated place, and the people that were there were a little bit messed up, and it was also gave me that feeling, like you said, of Silent Hill, where I was wondering what was happening with the story, trying to discover what was going on, finding like audio logs that was a little bit creepy. Sometimes you had to listen to them like in the dark. So there was a lot of elements that were really close to horror that then I realized I'm like, okay, if I can play these games, I can probably go and play these horror games again. And when the Resident Evil franchise just started to give you, I guess, more agency, more weapons, a little bit, kind of makes you feel a little bit like more like a badass. That's when I really gravitated over these games. And so I'm really happy that there were games that stole some elements, to be very honest, from Resident Evil, some tonal element, and just applied that to different other games so that it could actually bring me in as someone that was from the outside really admiring it.
Yeah, I played BioShock. I haven't played Fear or Condemned. So I think that's really interesting. I think maybe if they ever make a Fear remake, I would totally be down to play that.
I think a lot of people are rooting for that. Hopefully, it might be something that they might be able to get off the ground if they clear up some licensing issues or something. But if not, I think on PC you can still probably try to play these games and have like mods that would make the game look better. But those are really like the games for me. But I know that there was a whole lot of evolution at that time, and I think that around that time, like the I would say late 2000s, early 2010s, where I feel like a lot of different horror games starting to happen, a lot of different genres starting to emerge from like I said, we talked about a little BioShock, we talked about Silent Hill, but there's also games that came out a little bit later that we were able to enjoy almost together at the same time. And can you talk a little bit more about games like that? Let's say you talked about Silent Hill. I remember there was a playable trailer for Silent Hill that came out. They teased us about a new game that was coming out from Hideo Kojima. I talk a little bit about my love for Metal Gear, right? That's really what got me into those kind of cinematic games. And I hear now he's making a Silent Hill game, and you told me about it because I didn't want to play it. Can you tell me a little bit about that evolution and what that trailer did for you and when it came to horror games?
I'm just going to say the fact that that game did not come out is a crying shame. It was such a tease, and you could tell that the elements were there to make a really, really good horror game. And it's just so sad that they weren't able to like follow through on it. But yeah, that game was great. Like that little trailer. Sorry, and I will call it a game because you know what? It probably took me a couple of hours to like actually get through it because I savored it piece by piece, trying to figure out those puzzles through that darn hallway. And you know what? I have to give it to you. When you went and played, you killed it. You actually did the puzzles like you were on it, and I was like, "Oh man, look at this guy!" Like,
what? The sheer mystery of it and the fact that it's like a loop, but every time you went through a loop something else would happen. And yes, it's like I think a lot of times we talk about this and it'll come up a lot. It's the mystery. When there's a hook, a suspense to it, and then you add a gameplay element to it, to me it checks all the boxes. The presentation was great, but what I am happy is that this game actually inspired a lot of games, right? A lot of games came out after that had that kind of like walking simulator kind of vibe to it, where your character doesn't have any weapon, has a lot of resources, sometimes just a flashlight, sometimes a camera. And I know that you played a lot of these games. One that I'm gonna call, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was one that you're in a like psychiatric ward or something and you have a camera. Outlast.
Yeah, I think it was Outlast. I mean, I didn't really follow through and play the whole series because it was a little too survivory for me. Like it was a lot of hiding and waiting for enemies to pass. So I don't mind that for like a certain sections of a game, but when I feel like the whole game is centered on that and I have no power, I have no gun, I have no ability to kind of fight them off, and all I'm doing is hiding, then I'm not really like down for all that.
So
I don't have the patience.
So I guess a game that would have been similar to that I know you've talked to me about and I know you want to talk about, and let's talk about it now. A game that's similar to that vibe, I feel, was Visage.
Okay. Visage. Yeah, you could tell where Visage took the elements from PT and Silent Hill and some games like that, but it was different. I felt like it was three stories that were interwoven together, surrounded by a man who actually ends up murdering his family at the beginning. So at the beginning, you're like, whoa, okay, what's happening? And then it's almost like he gets stuck in purgatory. And this is you kind of living out those three stories through his own like mental interpretation.
And I got to be honest, that's a game that looked very interesting. I feel like visually in the story, they were trying to do a lot of things that were very eye grabby to me. The only things I want to disclose to all the audience member here and anybody that might listen to this, just to make it clear, I will never play that game. I will never try to attempt to go through it. It is definitely beyond my comfort point. Where because once again in this game I don't think you're empowered at all, right? You're really just going through these events, and it's, yeah, I just saw you playing, and I know that if your comfort level, it was very close to your comfort level. For me, it's like way past.
Every time I'm trying to suggest the game to you, I'm like, hey, why don't you try Visage? Like, you've really like graduated. But yeah, that game did give me a lot of elements of like dread. And even after I was done playing it, I kind of felt like I was still thinking about things that had happened in the game. So yeah, so I have to give it to them for those reasons alone. Like, it really kind of sucked me in, and there was points when I was like, oh, I don't even want to go forward, but I know I need to go forward. I need to open this door. I need to try to figure out what the heck's going on. So I give it to them. Like, I mean, if PT would have even been half that game, it would have been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think that it's definitely a nice spiritual successor, almost of one kind. And for me, the only thing that I can bring it back to this, speaking of PT, is I do remember in the later Resident Evil games, if I'm not mistaken, I think Resident Evil 8, you do have a moment in that game of brilliance where they almost replicate and I'm sorry to say if people are not ready for it, spoiler alert, they replicate the fetus thing in Resident Evil 8, and that really got me vibes of PT, because you have no weapons and you're just going through that house, and this thing is, of course, something is chasing you. We'll just put it out there. And yeah, I felt like that was also reminiscing of that, and I like when people are actually taking little pieces from other games and having that inspiration kind of carry through. And I think that it was kind of almost like an homage to PT, almost a kind of respectful way of knowing that the game never came out, but let's just give you a little bit of that vibe. And I love that these developers did that for us. But there's different kind of horror games out there that are also fun. Games where you don't have guns, but it's not necessarily just a walking simulator. Those are story-based games that were given to us by one of my favorite developers, who did, of course, the beautiful game like Until Dawn, Supermassive Games. If they've done also the Men of Medan Chronicles or series or collective.
Yeah, the
Dark Anthology
series.
exactly,
Yeah.
as well as The Quarry.
Yeah.
Now, we enjoy these games, of course, because of the story nature of it, because of the choose your own adventure aspect of it. But can you talk to me a little bit about, for you, what actually made these games fun, knowing that they're so different from, let's say, a game like Resident Evil?
Okay, well, the fun about these games is that we actually got to play them together.
Yeah.
And that was super fun for me. We each got to pick our characters and then pass the controller back and forth and watch each other make make choices, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But at the end, I felt like we were really in it together. So, I mean, and I do like how there's separate endings as well. So if we were going to go play the game separately, we could each have, totally different endings and then come back and talk about it. So those are like, as a kid, I loved those choose your own adventure novels. Like, those were dope. But to be able to have that in a video game and then share it with, like, your friends, it's really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, when Until Dawn came out, it was very much, this is a nice novel idea to get a game that, and I will say that is very accessible to non-gamers, to people who are maybe not used to playing games. Of course, because of the QT nature of it, they might miss out a couple of things, but it's baked into the experience. You can fail. Failure is part of the whole game. It doesn't end the game. It just maybe ends a storyline or ends a certain action, but the game will continue. It will allow people to shape it. I think that they've even added modes where you could play on your phone and stuff like that. You could play with people online if they were not here in the room with you. I really would say to recommend to everyone, if you want to play a game with friends that love watching movies, and you probably want to maybe get them into video games or get them to at least experience one video game that they may like if they're into horror, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. I
Yeah.
mean, all of those series, Supermassive, Until Dawn, the Dark Pictures Anthology, and The Quarry.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like don't take it too seriously. It's not gonna like be super duper scary, but they're really, really fun to play. And yeah, you do see, you get your kill to death ratio up.
Yes,
And
some are better than others, but I think they're all fun to go through at least once. So get them on sale if you see them. There are other games that are a little bit around that where there's a lot of story, but the gameplay is also supreme. And these games have been The Last of Us when they came out. They were, of course, I don't think we need to talk in length of how good it was. It has a lot of horror elements that was actually put into that game. And I know that you you loved that series.
yeah, I really like The Last of Us. It's a darling at this point. It's a classic. I think, most people have played it and loved it. And I mean, it has pretty much everything that you want. Good stories, good characters that you actually care about. Um, yeah, I mean, the gameplay was fun.
And the good thing is, if you don't want to play the game, you don't have to. You can just watch the HBO series, which is a pretty good adaptation of the source material. Not to drag this a little bit too long. What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about games that we've played together that we would have never expected because we want to talk about horror games, but they've made multiplayer horror games such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit adjacent. Things like Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood. So what do you think about these games now that are trying to bring this to a multiplayer kind of like level?
I think it's great. I think keep on doing it because not only do we need more co-op games that we can play together, either online or couch co-op, that brings people together. We also, like, of course, me, we're gonna need more horror games, man. Like, let's get the horror ante up because it's just a really fun genre. And when it's done right, it just hits differently, it makes you want to play more. It sucks you into the world and it keeps you engaged.
Definitely two things that we don't have enough in video game is games that can make you laugh and games that scare the hell out of you. The reason why is they make you feel something, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like warm my cold dead heart. I need to I need to feel something.
Plus, a good scare or a good laugh does bring people together. Now, I would not serve our fans without talking about two games that or two series that are in the realm. We're going to talk a little bit about the Amnesia series, and then we'll talk about another critically acclaimed game. But you talk to me about the Amnesia series. I've not played any of them, so just give me a broad description of them.
Yeah, okay. So I've played all four of the Amnesia series, including the newest one, The Bunker.
The Chinese Room.
And I've played the Amnesia series really takes place. So I mean it spans like a couple decades, right? Or no, sorry, not decades, centuries, because you
Mm-hmm.
start kind of playing from the 18 or the 19th century, and then it kind of goes all the way up until the World War II. So the thing about the Amnesia series is there's elements that are good and fun, and I understand what they're trying to do, but the gameplay is clunky. The story can be very clunky and very dragged out. And I told myself after playing The Bunker that I'm not playing another Amnesia series. They cannot suck me in. I'm not doing it. So if they do that, I want you to, slap me in the face and tell me you don't want to be friends anymore.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to the game, it is definitely a game that's made on a lower budget by a smaller team. But yeah, they still have their critical acclaim. So if walking simulators are a little bit more of your genre, if you like slower horror games, something that's a little bit more of that pace, those can be games for you. But judging from what you said, it is not a game for me. I will respect it from afar. And one that we want to talk about very quickly is a game series that did not really started like horror to me. It was more like a thriller suspense. Alan Wake. And of course, what Remedy has been able to do with the whole series, talking about Control as well, because Control had elements that were a little bit like horror, sci-fi horror. But this time around with Alan Wake 2, they've changed that series from something that was a little bit more of a suspense thriller kind of series to something that was a bona fide horror game. talk to me very, very quickly about your love for the Alan Wake series.
Yeah, I mean, I love watching the evolution of Alan Wake. You know what I mean? Because it did start out very campy and, a little bit, a little bit cheesy, of course, and like, the gameplay was not as fun as it was in the second one,
Hmm.
for sure. So in the second one, they've really taken those elements, the sound design, the way it looked, the way that they're trying to like put in those jump scares, I think that they've kind of honed in and really like made it a true like horror classic.
Yeah, I really have to applaud them for what they're doing to the genre. I've actually I just finished playing Hellblade first game, and I really think that these developers are really pushing the envelope of what it means to actually make interactive titles, interactive stories. I think that's not only a horror game. I think that even people that might not be interested in horror games should play these games at least so they don't miss a piece of history, a piece of great storytelling.
Yeah, and like Remedy too, like we've talked about this, we both played Control.
Hmm.
And I know you really love Control.
Yep, love it.
Would you consider that a horror game?
I'd say it's adjacent. I wouldn't say it's a 100% horror game, but I definitely say it's very close. It has a lot of elements, a lot of that vibe. If let's say sci-fi horror is your kind of vibe, then that would probably fit in there. I would say yeah, it has a little bit of horror elements, but yeah, it's just a great game, and it's just a great time to be a horror lover or someone that enjoys these titles because we're getting a lot of different flares. As you've heard in that conversation, we have the slower burns, like a walking simulator. We have psychological horrors. We have those are a little bit more adult themes, those that will be very uncomfortable for you to play. The very high-end one from the AAA developers, and then the little ones by our favorite indie developers. And so I think there's something there for everyone. Um, in closing words, I would like to know, is there anything that you would like to say to horror fans out there?
I think it is just keep playing games, keep playing horror games, keep supporting the industry, keep giving good feedback, and hopefully encouraging studios to continue doing what they're doing, or even some studios that wouldn't consider doing a horror game to try doing a horror game. You know what I mean? And like, let's get a fresh perspective on that. Let's get, maybe something that we wouldn't consider to be the classic horror genre, but you actually give it like some elements, some spooky elements, some scary elements, and make us feel emotional about it.
You said that the moment you said it, I thought about it, an Obsidian game, like imagine like a horror RPG, but we're like with like a comedic elements, like they're well known for being able to do. Sign me up for that one.
Yeah,
I'm
that'd be funny. Yeah.
I'm gonna echo what you said here, and I would like basically to say almost the same thing. If you have any comments, if you like this video, please subscribe. That will help us greatly. That will give us the energy to get to do more. Let us know a little bit more what you want. Please comment down below. Let us know, what do you think about the state of the horror games nowadays? Are we lucky? Are we living in a resurgence? Or was there a time, maybe in the 90s, early 2000s, where you think that the genre was at its peak? Comment down below. As always, Miki, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And as always, everybody, see you on the next one.
Bye.